Welcome back. I hope you guys have had a fantastic past few days. Hope you've been able to learn something, connect with people, meet new friends, connect with old ones. I'm really excited to introduce our closing keynote speaker today. Guy Blomberg has been working in games for over 20 years, overseeing global teams and building million-dollar commercial strategies, and has asked me not to read the rest of his bio, so it's not a spoiler for his presentation. So please join me in welcoming Guy Blomberg to the stage.
Spoiler, I like it. Hi there. Thank you for having me. I'm very privileged to be here. I'd actually like to start off apologizing. That's a good way to start. To many of the New Zealand folks that I've hung out with recently. I'm originally from Australia, but I've been living in America for the better part of the last 4 years. And the genuine, heartfelt niceness of the people here has been a little bit confronting. In our studio, I sometimes get angry that people are so supportive and conversational with each other. I'm expecting them to argue and fight more, but they don't. It's lovely. And I'm so sorry that I've brought this attitude over. Yesterday, I think Chantel from DPC told me she was doing a talk, and I'm like, I'll turn up so I can heckle you from the back. And I'm like, what an asshole thing to say. I'm so sorry. I should be supportive and cheer you on. So it's been wonderful getting to know a lot of you, and you've all just been so wonderfully welcoming and nice. So thank you. I'm going to tell you all about myself. This is a story in 3 parts, and hopefully by sharing a bit about myself and my career, it'll give you some perspective and hopefully maybe a little bit more confidence to do what you do together. I'm also aware that I am the last thing keeping you from the after party, so I know what a closing keynote is like, so I'm not going to drone on for too long, I promise. Actually, I am curious though, the mix of the audience here today, how many folks are professionals that currently work in the games industry? Just put your hands up. Wow, okay, all right, put your hands down. How many folks here are students or people looking to get into the games industry? Wow, okay, all right, this will be really interesting then, because peppered through this talk, I've decided to intersperse it with the occasional tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way that have been super valuable to me and maybe of interest to you as well, but no pressure, they're there for your taking. We'll see how it goes. So again, this is just, the first bit is just talking through who I am and why I'm actually up here on this stage. So, I was a web designer and developer. You wouldn't know it by this slide. Self-taught Flash animator. Does anyone remember Flash? There, yeah, good nods. Yes, yeah. Got my job because I did my resume in Flash 1.0 back in the day. Professional websites for many corporate clients, bars, restaurants. I became a senior designer at a company that actually created the Domino's Pizza app, claim to fame. I ran my own web dev business after that. And again, this was 20 years ago, so my graphic design skills are just a bit, they're not up to date. Plus, I couldn't find many photos from back then, so just keep your expectations for these slides very low. But that said, by all accounts, I was a self-taught, successful, professional web designer and developer for a good 5 years of my life. I founded what ended up being one of the biggest independent gaming websites in Australia. At its peak, we had 14 writers from around the country. We had a podcast with an audience of 250,000 people. We actually had around about 500,000 people checking the website every month, which was pretty good for even now, but back then that was phenomenal. The format was like Penny Arcade meets IGN, so it was like draw weekly comics, and we'd have like people writing articles and doing features and previews. Publishers sent us games, invites to events, large community events, house parties. We'd go to all the giant gaming consumer events around Australia and have cool community-based events. It was a really popular and very successful website. I was also a game developer. I was a UI, UX, I gotta get that right, developer for SEGA Creative Assembly. They're the creators of Medieval 2, Total War. I was the UI designer creating the assets for menus, loading screens, achievements, and then I was involved in the community management and the pitch process for the next title, the 12 London Olympics game, I think. And I also worked for a developer called Orin Games as well, the creators of the internationally renowned game at the time, the RTS Dark Reign, if anyone remembers that. This is a long time ago. I did a gaming TV show. It was produced and starred in it. It was called Game Damage, of which the trailers garnered over 1 million views on YouTube. This was in collaboration with a content creator at the time by the name of Yahtzee Croshaw from Zero Punctuation, who was a local friend. Our producer traveled to Cannes to an event called MIPCOM, where we showed it to networks and we got deals for distribution in Korea, Canada, and Sweden. The Swedes like to acquire things. I'm not going to show the trailer, but you can look it up online, and if you really, really want. I also started a video game cocktail bar. This was called the Manor Bar. It was arguably the first gaming cocktail bar in the world. I like to hold on to that, in Brisbane, in Australia. Gaming is a fun thing to do while drinking, it turns out. And the way we formatted the bar was, it was not like a LAN cafe where people sit down in front of computers, and it wasn't a geeky setup. It was actually designed to be like a cocktail bar with a beautiful back bar selection of liqueurs and spirits and really cool cocktails, low lighting, cool music, and a whole bunch of TVs around the side where people would come and play games. And gaming is actually a great way for people to interact with each other, interact with strangers, much better than dance floors or pool tables. Pick up and play multiplayer turn-based video games are a great way to get strangers interacting. Do a round of Mario Kart, the person that loses holds up their controller and is like, does anyone else want to go? So it was really successful. One of the other things we had to do with this bar, it was in this building called the Judith Wright Center of Contemporary Arts. And we had to, in order to actually open up a bar there, we had to prove the artistic merit of the content within it. So along with the other Brisbane-based developers, we had to prove the artistic merit of games, video games, to the Queensland government at the time, which was quite a thing to do. And we did it, and we opened a bar. It was great. We worked with local devs, chiptune artists, esports groups, and we launched parties. We expanded the bar to Melbourne. We spent a lot of time outreaching and partnering with gaming companies. Sony didn't want to be involved initially, but then Microsoft and Nintendo were. Halfbrick had a game playable there almost a year before release. Gearbox Software had their upcoming Duke Nukem Forever playable to the public there, only the second time in the world. I know that doesn't sound great now that we know what the game was like, but at the time it was a big deal. And actually, this is my first tip in terms of outreaching to folks. So use the mullet concept for sending emails. This is something that Trent Custis from League of Geeks actually coined, but this is what I use. The best way to communicate: business up front, party in the back. Get your first couple of sentences that are business terminologies for the email, and then put the personality at the end of it. Get the point across in the first two sentences, then be personable. Don't waste time. I was one of the first folks that brought on to work on MCV Pacific, the first B2B business-to-business publication for the Australasian region. I was the sales and marketing manager, a very different role. In the first year, brought in enough to cover costs of editorial. We ran gaming industry parties, covered industry updates, launches, hiring, and ran more gaming industry parties. That was not an accidental repeat. PAX Australia. I was one of the founding members of the team that launched PAX in Australia, a launch event with over 35,000 people. It's grown into the largest consumer event in the region. As the only person with gaming experience and contacts on the local team, I oversaw all the panels, free play areas, live bands, tournament spaces, the PAX Oz Indie showcases, and liaised with the Americans on what things did or didn't work in the region for the local culture. I was part of initiatives such as the Diversity Lounge, PAX Rising, the Indie Pods, the outdoor venue integrations, and global outreach. I would travel to the PAX shows in the US and try and pitch PAX Australia to companies over there. PAX was launched with 35,000 people. By the time it hit 2019, it was over 80,000 people that went to that event. I then became the Global Gaming Content Director. I got the opportunity to continue working with ReedPop, the company behind PAX, to grow their gaming globally. I oversaw the launches of gaming events such as Play Paris in France, EGX Berlin in Germany, GC Play in Guangzhou in China, Game Convention Seoul in Korea, as well as working on the events in Vienna in Austria, and Singapore. I also took more of a leading role in the Western events, such as EGX in the UK and the PAX shows in America, West, East, South, a little bit of Unplugged. And the acquisition of gaming media plans in the UK, we brought on Gamer Network. So I also oversaw the content for Eurogamer, Rock Paper Shotgun, VG247, GamesIndustry.biz. I technically moved to Brighton in the UK, but was so busy traveling, I didn't even get a chance to rent an apartment there. I oversaw the media brands working on our events, got Eurogamer to do hosted panels, full Gamer Network theaters, meet and greets. We had a roster of content creators that I provided opportunities for. I also worked closely with GamesIndustry.biz to bring their investment summits to the US. In the US, looking for opportunities, I worked with underrepresented groups to spin up different areas of PAX, such as the PAX Together Expo floor space and the Latinx in Gaming Theater. There's another tip that I actually learned from that. So I am a stereotypical middle-aged, middle-class white dude whose name is his gender. I could not be any more middle of the road if I tried. And I've worked on projects and brands that have had huge potential and opportunity to include more representation and elevate diverse voices. Now, a mistake I used to make was to spend some time in those spaces and go, oh yeah, okay, I understand now, I've got it, I know what to do and how to do this. I need some like deep voice going, he did not, in fact, know what to do and how to do this. Surround yourself with people from these communities to work with. Be a conduit if you can, but more importantly, realize that you will never, ever fully understand or realize the experience of different folks. You can appreciate, you can get to know the facts, and you can do the best you can, but you'll always be learning and you'll never fully get it because you haven't lived it. That was a really important thing for me to actually pick up. The games industry gathering. You may have noticed a pandemic happened. Wasn't really a great time for physical events. You were a little bit more fortunate here, not that anyone was really fortunate. I was based in New York City when this happened, and at that period of time, walking through like Times Square when there were no cars, no people, except for delivery drivers on bikes zipping around at 4 p.m. in the afternoon with all the Times Square signs still going, I'm like, I've seen this movie. This is it. Where this is how it ends. It was terrifying and frightening. And one of the things that I missed was the interaction with people that we usually get at conventions like this, or at the local bars or whatever. So I started this little Zoom call thing, originally called the Games Industry Hotel Bar. I invited around 50 games industry friends to join, and suggested they invite others. Currently, the gig has over 4,000 vetted gaming industry professionals from around the world. It's got a very strong vetting process. Again, with the diversity collaborations I did before, they actually help to make sure that there's an equal balance of genders that are in the space, a good representation of people of color, and changing the name to GIG because it's not all about drinking. Not everyone likes to drink at networking events, which is great. Today, I'm the studio director at Riff Raff Games, a New Zealand-based developer with 2 titles currently in development. The studio was founded by the incredibly talented Joshua Boggs, who's up in the corner there with some of our team. It's been wonderful getting to know them. There's a team of 13 people whose studio is actually just across the road, which is perfect. And they'll be growing very soon. It's so cool to be back on the game dev side, and the team is incredibly talented and tight. I'm also the business development director for E3, a little show that happens, well, used to happen occasionally over in the US. We'll see how that goes. The VP of business development for Stride PR, a globally recognized PR agency that represents many brands like 505 Games. I'm on the board of directors of the IGDA. I'm an advisor for Supercrowd, the Indie Arena booth at Gamescom, and every second Monday back in New York, I pour drinks at my favorite karaoke bar. That is me. Thank you for going through that. I swear it's going to make a lot of sense soon. I think that's okay. That qualifies me to be up here talking to you today. My LinkedIn resume looks the part. I'm verified on Twitter. Like I'm all good, right? But that's not really how it works. I look around this room, and I've been to a bunch of panels over the last couple of days, and regardless of all the stuff that I just went through, I see a bunch of people that are incredibly talented and hear your stories and your experience, and I'm like, oh, I'm a studio director, and I don't have anywhere near the amount of knowledge or experience that you do. Oh, I look at my American peers, and I'm like, there's no disrespect to the NZGDA. I'm like, you could have flown down someone so much better. Like, I just want you to realize and understand that the success that you put out there and that people perceive you to be can sometimes be very much at odds with what you know to be true about yourself. Some people call it imposter syndrome. I just think it's the way we all are, frankly, to various degrees. And having to manage that and get perspective is what's actually important. So I'm going to go through this again, but from my perspective. And this will hopefully be entertaining for you, but probably a bit painful for me. So bear with me. Truth is, as a self-taught designer, I couldn't get a job to save myself. I had no experience whatsoever. I didn't have a degree. It was difficult to build a portfolio, and no one wanted to hire me. So I actually worked in the adult industry for 4 years when I actually first started. That was the only job that I could possibly get. I struggled for years to get a non-adult industry job because I could barely show any of the work that I'd actually done. Which leads me to my next tip, actually, which is know when to leave things off your portfolio, no matter how precious they seem to you. If they're outdated or inappropriate, or if there's a 5-year gap, explain it in some other way. The Australian Gamer website, failure, never monetized it, ended up merging it with Game Planet, a New Zealand website, lovely people, where it eventually and inevitably died a slow and irrelevant death. Spent so much spare time on that website for over 7 years. It went nowhere. In the time since we started, other websites like IGN, GameSpot, Kotaku, all opened up local offices. Other amazing community websites popped up. We were treated as the not serious games people, not real journalists, and got treated incredibly poorly by the rest of the industry. It was a very painful experience. Creative Assembly. I didn't work on the critically acclaimed Total War series. The game I worked on was called Stormrise, an ambitious but absolute failure of a game with a 50% Metacritic score. It was so bad, SEGA have pretty much scrubbed all mention of it from their website. Enjoy the comments up there from the gaming peers. Additionally, at Oren, the other company I worked for, I was regulated to do web design and box art. I was so bored, I actually spent all my time learning magic tricks. And speaking of which, actually, I've got an interactive bit I want to try here. I spent $60 on these things, so I'm gonna commit to it. I've got a couple of packs of cards. I'm gonna hand it out to you. Just take one card out, pass it on to the next person, and let's see if we can get as many cards out into the audience as possible before we end. Oh, I love that crinkling sound, like nearly opened cards, like a Magic the Gathering deck. Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going here and continue through my failures. Game damage. Oh boy, we did 2 episodes of the most cringe-worthy material you've ever seen. 3 white dudes on a couch complaining about video games. How original. I ended up sinking about $10,000 of my own money into this. A bunch of us put more money in to get it produced to such a high standard, and it never went anywhere. Are there any content creators in the room, by the way? Yeah, okay, all right. So remember the first time you really read the comments on a video of yours that really blew up? And that's never a positive experience. So we had that to a huge degree because we also had Yahtzee, who is on it and is a gaming critic. And yeah, I'm not gonna show this video. I never want to show this video, but it's an important part of my history, so I'm mentioning it. Oh, yeah, cost a lot of money, sorry. The Mana Bar. Failure. After the first year of success in Brisbane, we wanted to quickly capitalize on it and open up a Melbourne venue as soon as possible. A little bar in Brisbane is cute, but a series of bars sounds like a potential empire. That said, setting up the Melbourne venue was a nightmare. It took a year longer than we expected. We could only get a liquor license that opened till 11 p.m, and the venue was awkward, to say the least. At the same time, the Brisbane venue was failing. I eventually had a massive fallout with my business partners. I'm no longer friends with most of them to this day. Perhaps the worst thing is, as I was no longer involved with the bar, It was still the thing most people knew me for. So publicly keeping up appearances that everything was great while the reality of my dream video game cocktail bar was failing around me really hard was tough. Yes, it closed. Thank you, slides, for reminding me. The B2B trade publication, the site itself wasn't a failure, but the interesting thing here was, the disappointing thing to me, was the realization that I was a terrible sales and marketing person. I would actually go around to the publishers, all the people I knew, and be in conversations with them. I remember one with 2K, with the marketing guy from 2K, and I'd done up this amazing presentation. Here's the MCV website, here's your ads in it. It looks beautiful, and this is how much we need. And he said to me, yeah, no, that looks really good. You've gone to a lot of effort. This is pretty expensive, though. And my response was, yeah, it is. I know. Yeah, and he was like, you know, I was like, would you spend like a little bit less on it? He's like, no, not really. And I'm like, yeah, no, I know. It's not. I know. But I really, let's have a drink. Thanks for your time. Like, I just was not good at it. And this was my role after the Manor Bar, and it further solidified to me my ineptitude in our industry. PAX Australia. You know, not everything is a failure. Actually, that one I'm really proud of. So I did really good work with PAX Australia. So that was really good fun. The Global Gaming Content Director. That's the thing, though, is sometimes you get really cocky. I thought I could do what I did with PAX Oz and apply it all over the world. I was wrong. So GC Play in China was shut down by the government, who required guarantees that any visitors wouldn't break their strict censorship guidelines. Our local partner was not willing to risk jail time on our guarantees. Gaming Convention Seoul was merged into the show floor of Comic-Con Seoul and simply felt like a gaming component of a comic show. It was abandoned soon after. Play Paris actually happened. However, for a show where we predicted about 15,000 people would attend, we ultimately had a little over 1,500 turn up. Each day standing around and watching the very few amount of people turning up to the show, giant barricades that we expected for lines of people, was incredibly embarrassing. EGX Berlin didn't continue. The Singapore Gaming Show never materialized. We didn't have the support to grow the Vienna show, and even the core events, EGX and PAX, were starting to suffer. I moved to the US to focus on North American shows. I never really found my place fitting in with the team, focused on the new initiatives, but I felt like I was in most people's way. The games industry gathering was born out of the pandemic, and this is something that I still do to this day, but I honestly have no idea what to do with it. The curation level is so extreme. Running the IRL events takes an enormous amount of work and oversight. We used to run it every week. It was that necessary, and now it happens once a month, even though it's 4,000 members strong. It feels like the virtual networking moment may have passed. Has it? I don't know. Are we over it? Is there any other way to connect with folks from different regions and backgrounds? I don't think we fixed that, but I also think the gig didn't end up being the solution to that either, that I'd hoped for. At least I took advantage of the opportunity, though, which is one of these other tips, right? Always be ready for opportunity if you have the time and interest. The gig was still an opportunity that happened out of a terrible experience. I do just want to actually highlight this, something that happened when Pokemon Go was released first in Australia and Japan. I saw it. I'm like, oh, this is great. I should organize and get together with a couple of friends and see if we can go for a walk around the Sydney Botanic Gardens. This would be fun. So I created a Facebook event for it and invited about 50 people. 15,000 people RSVP'd for it, and thousands of people actually turned up to attend. Nintendo doesn't actually represent Pokemon Go in Australia, so myself and my friend Jigsy that actually organized the event were on all the news reports talking about Pokemon Go and the phenomenon. The irony is I'm not actually a Pokemon player, so my friends who are Pokemon experts, I'm like, well, I'm the Pokemon expert, whatever. But it was wild. And during all of those televised moments, I'm like throwing in as much references as I can to PAX Australia or other things that we're doing, even throwing in some like, oh, you should actually focus on some locally made Australian games that are here, using that opportunity as much as I could. Just one other really quick thing, which I think is hilarious. One of the programs actually completely renamed me. I have no idea. Did someone's like fingers slip on the keyboard or something? But this actually became a meme at PAX Australia where people actually started putting it around across the place. And eventually the enforcers actually had a memorial service for this meme, which was great. So you just never know where these opportunities can take you. So that brings me to now. And these are the things that I'm currently working on, and I really hope I live up to these expectations. As a studio director, I hope I'm able to actually revitalize E3 in a meaningful way that benefits the industry, I hope. But it's also hard when, you know, the way others perceive you and the way you perceive yourself can be so much at odds. And like, here's the thing, I did look at so many of these projects as failures. I would see the social media of friends and colleagues and mentors and complete strangers and judge myself against them. And my God, we've done that so much more during the pandemic as well. You know, I used to think if only I could be as successful as them, you know, what did I learn? What did I gotten from over 2 decades of work? This is all just a matter of perspective, right? So the third part of this is to go through this again, but actually give you a bit of perspective. The web design and developer position in the adult industry. Actually, working in the adult industry was to work at the forefront of new technology, animation, video, PHP, MySQL, mobile apps. If I'd have worked at a traditional place, I never would have skilled up so quickly. Those graphic design skills still come in handy to this day, as you can see. Australian Gamer. It got me in front of people in the games industry. Before, I was not in the games industry. I was just a fan that started a website. I started making connections, building up a reputation. After interviewing the companies at Orin and SEGA Creative Assembly, I later managed to get jobs working for them because of those connections. I got connections to publishers and other professional media outlets, friendships that are still meaningful and helpful to this day. I didn't write this down, but I did just want to mention, like, out of like your most abject failures or the moments where you're like, that didn't work, it's fascinating how many relationships that you can actually get out of those experiences, almost forged in fire, that will stay with you for a lifetime. This morning we caught up with Tony Reed from Epic. So I interviewed him when he was at Irrational Games as a gaming journalist way back in that time. Having those connections is really important. That's a huge opportunity. For SEGA Creative Assembly, I got to see firsthand the inner workings of a game developer failing to make a game and to make those lasting connections. That's the theme you're gonna see here. Also, when I was at Orin, I had so much spare time that I learned magic tricks. So I'm gonna teach you all a magic trick at this particular point in time, because the tip that I want to actually put here is learn some openers that get you comfortable talking to strangers. For me, it's magic tricks. For other people, it's talking about boats, or it's talking about fashion, or whatever is the thing specific to you, but I thought it'd be fun to tangibly teach you a magic trick. Who has a card in their hand right now? All right, good. All right. So, this is how you make a card disappear. Doing a magic trick is like an IKEA furniture catalog. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, right? So step 1 is in your dominant hand, right or left. You hold the card, 4 fingers with your thumb in front of it. I know this is a bit difficult. You don't want to hold it in front of the face of the person next to you, so hold it in whatever position is comfortable. That's step 1. Step 2 is to actually move your fingers over it to like the devil horns position, like you'd see at like, you know, Metallica concerts or something like that. The thumb over the 2 fingers in the middle and the 2 horns up the end there. And the card sits in between the 2 fingers and the thumb. Have you all got that? Yep, okay. Work. There we go. The next part is you bend this with these fingers, you bend it back, and just watch me do it for a second. You bend it back over those 2 fingers, so it's folded over those 2 fingers like that. And then the last part is keeping your fingers squeezed together, you let go. Obviously it takes a bit of practice, but like when you can actually do it at speed, you can actually make a card disappear and come back. Not too bad for actually handing out business cards at conventions. To all of you as well. I'm curious, did anyone like nail it? Did anyone do like they're like, yeah, I can do it? Anyone? No? No one's willing to stand up? Okay, fine. Game Damage, the failed gaming TV show. I learned the ins and outs of video production, how difficult camera work can actually be, but it also gave me the connections with the local government organizations to be able to get the applications we needed approved for the Manor Bar, and the Manor Bar introduced me to the global gaming audience. I connected with people from outside of Brisbane, outside of Australia. It was incredibly important. It gave me a legitimate platform as an entrepreneur in Australia and amongst the local and international media. Perhaps most importantly, it put me on the radar of Penny Arcade, who talked about it in one of their comics. And when they did start to turn their eyes towards PAX in Australia, they were looking for people on the ground to help them, and they were already aware of someone who was well connected and experienced in running community events. Also incredibly important was to learn about the business side of things and the dangers of becoming partners with your friends. The MCV Pacific Trade publication, again, invaluable experience to know what I was and wasn't good at. At the time, I wasn't good at sales and marketing. Like, that's a really important thing to learn what you're not good at by actually giving it a go. That was invaluable looking back on it at the time. PAX Australia, everything I'd done up until this point prepared me to actually work at PAX Australia. All of these failings actually gave me all the experience I needed to work on this event, working with publishers through AustralianGamer.com, hosting community events via the Manor Bar, understanding stage and presentations with Game Damage, appreciating what the industry actually needs via MCV Pacific, and actually working at SEGA. Even my graphic design skills were put to the test in the early days as I managed all the social media platforms and the marketing. Really, the opportunities presented at a global level led to me to take on the global role. Going over to America to try and sell PAX to the American audiences gave me incredible connections. Although it's funny, when I was actually going over to try and sell PAX, I didn't need to explain PAX to the Americans at PAX. I just needed to sell Australia. So I put on the worst Australian accent I could possibly think of, go up to all these exhibitors, be like, oh, g'day, how you doing? I'm from down under. Struth crikey, she'll be right. Tell you what, come on down under. You can hug a koala and fight a kangaroo. Like, I know my Aussie friends are incredibly embarrassed of that, but that's, it actually leads to another tip that I've got in terms of actually making those connections when you're actually overseas and actually making an impression. This is one tip that served me incredibly well. It's very specific though. When doing business or taking meetings in bars and restaurants, head there before you go there before you go there for your meeting and get to know the staff. Note their names on your Google Maps, your Google Notes in the location, so you don't forget. It's classy. It establishes that you're comfortable in that space. That has been an incredible tip that's helped me so much at international events across the board. The Global Gaming Content Director. In essence, I'm probably responsible for the most failed global gaming event launches around the world because of this job. But you know what that means? That means I have more experience on what not to do in more locations around the world than almost anyone else. And at all points in my career from this point forward, I've been approached by almost every event organizer around the world that I practically have an open door to come work for them because I failed at doing all these things and know what not to do. Sometimes that is more important and more valuable in just successfully doing the projects. Once you do an event or release a game and the expectations to just do it again, sometimes you don't exactly know what actually went into making that thing successful. Failing teaches you way more. It's just harder and no one likes to talk about it. So I'd struggled so much to get established in the North American market when I first moved to New York. For the first 6 months, I felt more alone and lonely than I had in the last 20 years. It only took a global pandemic to get the chance to actually bring people together in a meaningful way, in a way that was needed, and position myself in that market as someone capable of doing that no matter what the circumstances. It was a way for people to come together, but to also really support each other during this crazy time. And I was the facilitator of that. That gave me an incredible reputation in the American market that I would not have gotten in any other way. All the roles I currently have are because of an amalgamation of my failures and successes. I think that this is the really, really, really important thing I want you to take away from this, is that so much of my success is derived from my absolute abject failures, even though these are things that you don't see or hear about, because of course you don't. Because people are scared of being found out or judged or not living up to the potential that others expect of them. And I'm no different. And I'm telling you that most people that I've met in the games industry at every level are no different also. I'd like to hope that maybe by exposing myself a little bit here, it makes you all feel just a little bit more comfortable and confident in your own journeys, a little less judgmental of your own failings, and to recognize that you never really know when a failure will actually be what leads you to a success. Now, I know the theme of NZGDC is Together in Motion, but perhaps a variation of that, which is more appropriate for what I've done, which is support during change, which is what we've all gone through these last couple of years. And it's nice to see so many folks here over the last couple of days supporting each other. Keep that up. That said, I appreciate you all taking the time to hear me here today. I'd like to call on us all to come together to motion towards the after party, towards the bar after this is done. Thank you very much for your time.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Guy. Another round of applause. All right, and now we're going to move on to something that I have been very much looking forward to over the past few months. I know everyone at the NZGDA has been working very hard to bring this, the Kiwi Game Starter competition together. This is the first time that it'll be back on the stage since, I want to say 2019. And we're really, really looking forward to celebrating this with all of you today. I'd like to start by thanking, as I often do in these, all of our incredible sponsors. First and foremost, the University of Canterbury, who's providing the first place prize. The University of Canterbury is proud to show its support of Aotearoa New Zealand's creative, innovative game development sector through sponsorship of the NZGDA's Kiwi Game Starter competition, and is dedicated to supporting the industry in this space. From their School of Product Design, which nurtures applied immersive game development and design programs, the HIT Lab New Zealand, their world-leading research center, and finally their digital screen campus, which from 2023 will become home to the future leaders of Aotearoa's game development, cross-reality, and film production industries. We'd also like to thank AppsFlyer. AppsFlyer helps gaming studios win the user acquisition game with full visibility into what drives players to your app. AppsFlyer's measurement suite helps studios to optimize user acquisition and LTV through detailed insights into the media sources and channels that convert the best. And finally, Amazon Web Services. After hearing the mission of the NZGDA, AWS were keen to support KGS and to help identify and support the next wave of gaming studios and startups in New Zealand. AWS for Games aligns purpose-built game development capabilities, including AWS Services, AWS Solutions, and AWS Partners, to help developers build, run, and grow their games with purpose-built cloud tools. Say hi at the after party. I'd also like to thank our incredible group of preliminary judges. These folks have helped us to review over 25 game submissions, and were really critical in helping us narrow that down to the final group. I'd also like to thank our finalist judges, Andy Phelps, Sam Ramlew, and Alexander Swartz, who have worked really closely with the finalists in these the final parts of the competition. And it's because of all of these judges and because of all of our finalists that we're able to award these prizes. So our runner-up will receive $10,000 and a personalized mentorship package, and our winner will receive $25,000 in the same personalized membership package. And so it is my great pleasure to announce to you the 2022 KGS finalists. First, we have Undeadly by Earreflex Studios. Second, we have Out of Sight by Mainframe Games. And finally, we have Warrior Chef by Rare Parrot Games. And now I'd like to invite Amazon Web Services and AppsFlyer to announce the runner-up.
E te whare, e te whānau, tēnā tātou katoa. When I announce the runner-up, I want to hear the biggest round of applause from all of you. And the runner-up of Kiwi Game Starter 2022 is Undeadly by Aeroflex Studios.
I forgot the clip. Now I'd like to, oh wait, you gotta say your words. Got ahead of myself.
Hi. If there's one thing that I have learned on my video game development journey so far, it's that making a game is hard. It's true, shocking, I know. Sometimes it seems like when you look at the to-do list, it gets bigger every time. Sometimes the bug reports fly in faster than the average StarCraft player. Sometimes game reviews are basically, oh yeah, game's fun, good graphics, 0 out of 10. No matter what, it seems there is seldom any respite for game developers in this world. But here at the NZGDC and with the Kiwi Game Starter, well, I think there's an exception. I'd like to take a moment to really acknowledge how amazing the Kiwi Game Starter is. Both in practice and in principle, it offers a place that welcomes aspiring developers. If you're serious about realizing a video game idea, and let alone seeing through one with commercial potential, all facets of your plan must hold up to scrutiny. However, we are all human, we know we have flaws, and this whole process can be scary. And I believe the importance of that last point is not lost on the folks behind the Kiwi Game Starter. The value of an experienced second opinion can perhaps not be understated. To have a mentor nod and smile while you say something that speaks true is gratifying, it's validating and rewarding. To have that same mentor nod while they politely think of a way to tell you just how wrong you were a moment ago is also rewarding, and it's worth its weight in gold. Because a mentor's presence necessitates a healthy dose of honesty, and we need both sides of that coin. We really do. And as much as I trust my neighbour or my aunties on their their gaming opinions, sometimes it takes the word of someone who has been there and done that. And to echo the remarks of Ren's earlier keynote, someone who's been on that very long march through that dark tunnel, but come out the other side. Game development is hard, and yet here we stand. We're here because there's something about it that we just can't quite shake. It's that motivation and that passion. We're here not because it's easy, but because it's meaningful. If we had chosen an easier path, well, where would we be today? I aim to take this opportunity to its fullest. I owe my sincere thanks to the sponsors, AWS Startups, AppsFlyer, Greenman Gaming. My best of wishes to the other finalists. Shout out to some of my family who made it here today. My name is Ryan LeCain, and I give you my best thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
And now I'd like to invite the University of Canterbury to announce our winner.
Kia ora koutou. So I feel very privileged to be announcing the winner of the Kiwi Game Starter for 2022. And if I can get this piece of card out of here, without further ado, the winner is Warrior Chef by Rare Parrot Games. Can't figure it out. Thanks. Well done, guys. Well done, thank you.
So that was a pretty hard speech to follow. I didn't really prepare as much as Ryan did. That was pretty great. Our speech is more of a thank you speech because we aren't here just because of us. First of all, thanks to the NZGDA for putting on this event, putting it on every year. All the sponsors, both of the NZGDC as well as Kiwi Game Starter, so University of Canterbury, AWS Startups, everybody who helped judge both the initial phase and the 3 judges that we had a very fun and fast 30-minute talk with that we didn't really get to, describe the game to. Sometimes you could go on for hours again about the product that you're making, what you spend your time on, working full-time for over a year now on Warrior Chef. We got our start thanks to a flexi-wage and business startup grant that wasn't even for games, born from the pandemic. We're currently having ongoing support from the NZ Film Commission, who was kind enough to choose us for the Interactive Development Fund. And also, we've just had so much help from other devs that we've chatted with at events, emailed. They've given their time to us to give some feedback, some harsh feedback. That's always great to hear as well. We feel really well looked after as newcomers to the industry, and we're definitely trying our hardest to make a game that's worthy of your praise and of this award. So thank you very much.
Let's give it up for all of our finalists. Thank you all so much, and congratulations. All right, I have just a few short words, and then I promise you can all be on your way to the event we're all looking forward to. First, I don't have a slide to say this, but I think that Dave Oshry deserves a shout out. He helped to put together the Made in New Zealand STEAM event, which has over 75 New Zealand games. As a part of it, I believe almost every studio in New Zealand was able to take part in that. That is actually happening right now. So please let's give it up for Dave and all his hard work with that. And finally, again, if you are interested in submitting your game for Kiwi Game Starter 2023, the applications will open in April. And again, if you've had a great time at this event and you'd like to be a part of future events, I encourage all of you to apply for the NZGDA board. The nominations will open the first week of October and run through the start of November. Again, I'd really like to thank all of our organizers. I'm sure you've seen them all running around during this conference. I'm sure you've seen Carl furiously tweeting all week. They're really the kind of key behind all of this, and so I'd like to really give it up for them. In addition, I'd like to thank our talk curation committee for helping us to put together a fantastic program. We received a ton of submissions, and we're really grateful for everyone who would like to participate in this event. And it's through their hard work that they help us put together a program that's both valuable and engaging. I'd also like to give a shout out to all of the incredible artists who are behind all of the artwork you've seen both leading up to this event, as well as all of the slides, the banners, the posters, the social media posts. So shout out to Chai Hui Yin, Josh Nelson, and Hannah McIntosh. And most importantly, I'd like to thank all of you. You're the reason that we're here. You're the reason that we put in all the hard work all of these months, and seeing all of the people excited about what you're seeing, excited about what you're doing, and coming up and telling us how much you appreciate the conference. It really makes it all worth it. So thank you for being an incredible community. Thank you for all your kindness and your support. And with that, I'd like to remind everyone that the after party will be at the Grand starting at 7 p.m. tonight. You can get free entry with your conference pass. It'll be a social mixer with nibbles and drinks, but we'll also have an entire floor that is non-alcoholics for anyone who would prefer to be separate from the alcoholic group. So again, thank you all so much for your participation, and I look forward to seeing you next year.